Okay, so as we get started here, we're going to start off with our very simple create table. This is bare bones. Databases can get away without having tables, right? Okay, so before we get into the software side,
we can just look at the syntax itself and see if we can understand what's going on. All right, so it says create table my states. So you probably guessed that that's actually the table name. Table is going to be named my states. Looked at says my code, my name, my pop, and it's got some data types following those. You might be able to guess that those are going to be our three attributes. So we're going to have three columns in our database that is named my states. My code is a very short 2-digit number or letters, we don't know, characters of some sort. Considering it's states, it's probably going to be letters like WA. It can't be null. My name would be the, Washington spelled out, characters up to 20. And then my population is an integer. We only want whole numbers in our population. And then our last line here is we've identified a primary key, which is my code. So in this case, instead of having a numeric key, because there's a finite amount of unique state abbreviations in the United States, and there's not a whole lot of them, and they're only 2 characters long, that isn't necessary to create a whole new primary key for this case. You can probably just keep it to the 2 or the my code. That's fine. So here we have some best practices. You'll usually see code run out like this or something very similar. So the textbook has some variations on this. Like the textbook has the parentheses on its own line, and then my code starts after that, so that all of the attributes start off the same. That's fine. Could it be any which way? Could you have enters and spaces all over the place? Yeah. SQL is really forgiving for line breaks and for spaces, but not for spelling. So it could be helpful for you to play around with that and experiment. But this is generally best practice what you'll see, something like this. You'll usually see the reserve words, the commands such as create tables, as all caps like this. That way you can differentiate them easily from the things like the actual names of the tables and the columns. And then one thing to be aware of is when you're in programs like Access, when you're in the DDL area, usually the only people actually messing with this stuff, because you can create a table doing the point and click GUI side, usually the people in here are the people that know what they're doing. So they have less or fewer warnings telling you like, oh, are you sure you want to do this? So it's really easy to mess things up if you're not being conscientious about what you're doing. So that's the warning. Save often, save multiple copies of things while you're figuring out your projects, just in case if needed, because this is a thing. I've definitely seen students accidentally delete a lot of things and not be able to, there's no Control Z in a lot of Access. So keeping that in mind. Okay, so let's bring this into the programs. I'm going to pause the recording momentarily while I switch programs.
okay, so here I
have fresh, empty files for both Access and Libre. I'm sorry if it's a little small on your screen. Honestly, the text doesn't really zoom on them anyways. But open up whichever program you're using so you can follow along. So I've just copied the statement from the previous slide, the the whole create table all the way through the primary key. So in access, it's going to be create, and then the query design, and then SQL. And we're just going to drop that in and run it. Cool. You don't see anything. Didn't give you any warnings. Database tools, go to relationships. Oh.
There we go. On the side there. You can see it there. Cool. So we have that in there. We can see double clicking
it that there's no data in there because we haven't given it any data yet. But if we go to design view, we can see that we told it short text field size 2, check. You see a little key there. It knows that's supposed to be the primary key. My name, also field size 20, is considered a short text. It read that. It interpreted the short long based on what we told it there. And we told it integer. You can see it says long integer right there. Look at that. Okay, so in Libre, we're going to be in Tools, SQL, write the code. We got some nifty color coding, so you'd help parse that out, even though it's really small and it's hard to see anything. Then execute. It's done. Great. Close. This one's really annoying because it won't show it right away. You have to actually refresh it. And look, here it is. Yeah, you see? Again, it's empty. So very similar. It's easy to get lost where you're going. Same code worked in both programs. So that's always a plus. Okay, let's switch back to the PowerPoint.
If I can find Zoom
in here somewhere.
Okay, so on the next slide, I have the actual directions of how to find things because
it's easy to get lost. For me, Access and Libre they're not really intuitive on navigation. No shame if you get lost. So the next slide, I just threw in all of the data types from the textbook. As we saw, programs themselves are different. So figure out which ones mean which for your own program and know the popular ones. So after the, in our original query, we had, let me pop back. We had the attribute, we had our data type, and then we have the not null, which was in one of them, not in the other. So you can see it's optional. It's not null. It was one of these optional data constraints. So the textbook had these ones listed, the null, not null, unique, primary key, and default.
Default, I tried to use in one of these programs
and it didn't like it. So again, go back to your specific program and see what it likes. Null and not null are going to be really common ones you see, as well as primary key. Just basically, can the person skip the field or not in the survey? Primary key, we're going to use it all the time to show which one is the primary key, obviously. In the textbook, you might have noticed that it actually says constraint in front of the primary key. Obviously, that's not what you do in Access. But understanding what these are and the order that they're in is going to be foundational for whichever program you are using.